in a very interesting turn of events here, and this has there's a personal aspect to me as well. I'm somebody who's highly concerned about the use of big corporate apps that are dragging my data, scraping my data. After putting out a terms of service update, Facebook owned WhatsApp, saw a drastic decline in users and apps like Telegram. I think Telegram had 25 million downloads. And so did Signal. And here's what's interesting. There was a no name, I think it was a pink sheet stock with where the company had one employee. It didn't sell anything. It had no sales.
Yeah. Signal authority or authorized,
Some
something like
yeah,
that.
like so
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
so
A pink sheet, no name, just because it had SNGL as the stock ticker name.
and I think it saw a $50 million increase in market cap because people were buying the stock. Not
Mm-hmm.
and the people who bought it and lost money. Let me just tell you something. You deserve it.
Well, yeah, of course. Look, in their not defense, but you should really anything you do with your money, you should make sure you know what you're doing. But
Yeah,
look, we've talked about this before. How influencers, and when I mean influencers, we're talking about Elon Musk in this
yeah,
situation, and I'm only calling him an influencer, not like we talk about social influencers.
yeah.
He's
No,
an
but he's
influencer in the way he has a large audience. So when
right.
Elon Musk says something, which several times in the last couple of years he's been even with his own company, if Elon Musk sends out a tweet and says, "Hey, new thing coming out tomorrow that's going to be in
His
Influx's
thing
business,"
goes, his
his
stock
his
goes up.
own stock shoots up. If he
Right.
mentions a company in a tweet, their stock shoots
Yeah.
up. So this situation, you had him mention this, what you're
He
talking
just
about.
said he just said use Signal, which is what I use. So my
But
extended
it was created by a nonprofit company, not a publicly traded company. People
well,
went
that's
out and
why
they
it's
found Signal, right? And then thought that it was that they were investing in the right thing. But I'm going to correct you something you said in the very first part of this. When WhatsApp changed its terms and conditions, it did not see a huge dip in usage. It's actually still leading both of these other platforms. What you did see is a lot of people downloading Signal and these other apps instead. So it didn't see
well,
WhatsApp didn't see a dip in provider. You know what I mean?
right. They didn't see a dip in usage, but there is ancillary data from people who have already said like because like WhatsApp is a ubiquitous chat app, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of people who are like it's going to take a minute for them to
Well,
like
look,
okay,
most terms and condition changes and privacy changes and stuff, and we should clarify the what they updated their privacy terms to be is we all know that Facebook acquired WhatsApp. You and I
yeah,
talked several episodes ago about how we thought ultimately Facebook was going to aggregate this data from different platforms that it had purchased, and that's exactly what the privacy terms change was they're rolling your data up to Facebook, right? That's what
yeah.
changed.
And
Um, Go ahead.
what what's interesting too is they came out with a blog post like saying we're just talking about when you're talking to corporations. And then
No,
someone went through the terms of service and said, no, it also mean like your terms also are saying even our chats between normal people. So here's how it impacts me personally. My extended, very loving, fantastic extended family has a WhatsApp group. Now,
okay.
I don't want to participate because I really don't care. The volume to which I don't care cannot be measured on any human scale.
That's
And I
awesome.
just, on principle, don't use WhatsApp. I use Signal. I chat with a lot of my friends over Signal. A lot of us have replaced our normal texting with Signal. And if you're one of these people who, like, half of my friends are iOS people, the other half are Android people, it's a cross platform app. We really like it. We all use it. It's endorsed by Edward Snowden. So we believe in the technology. It's open source, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
This terms of service update, my family now has switched over to Signal.
See, but they do it because of the terms and service, or did they do it because you told them to because of the terms and service?
would I tell them to join the app that I'm using when the whole point of me not using their app is that I don't have to participate in their dumb dialogues? The whole point is I don't have to participate.
Well, but no, my point is would your family have known that A, there was a policy change, and B, would they have changed had you not been there to say, hey, there was a policy change and here how it affects you?
I didn't bring it up to anybody. I think it was basically like one of my uncles is recently retired and now he's paying attention to the news. It popped up somewhere, and enough people, enough of his other friends are like, hey, we're gonna use Signal and then we're closing this one group. So I
Yeah.
think it was one of those things where enough people, because I was on the Signal train a long time ago. I also use Mark Cuban's app Dust. I prefer Dust actually,
See, now look,
over
again,
Signal.
I'm a dinosaur. I'm Generation X. I'm a generation before you. I have a hard time with the specifics of all of these different types of chatting apps
Yeah,
because everything that you do on these platforms, with the exception of each one has its little niches. We talked about creating groups and stuff like that that can't be done with Google messages, text, good old
yeah,
fashioned
and
text messages, right? I
well,
can
okay.
create a
Can I
group.
tell you some of the differences?
Well, and we can absolutely go through those. But my point is if I don't need those differences, right?
Yeah,
Like that unique feature, I don't need that app. Right, I have
right.
something that can already do it, that's where we now have a marketplace of hundreds of apps that do the same thing, but might do one thing better. Right?
Right.
We're going to talk about that a little bit later in our next in one of our stories later on in this episode. But you have these, and look, competition is good, right? It drives competition, drives the market. If you can get that niche, that thing that actually makes something better, I've yet to find an app that does anything for my needs much better than Google Messages, than a regular chat app.
Yeah. So I mean, Google Messages you're specifically talking about. It's actually just a Android to Android enriched messaging thing. And here's the difference: if I'm chatting with someone on my phone who has iOS, who has an iPhone,
Sure.
um, and we try to send each other a video, it's going to shrink that video and it's going to come out across pixelated and garbage.
Absolutely.
And for people who are concerned about, and you should, there's nothing wrong with or paranoid about being concerned with the government seeing your conversations,
Okay.
because we know.
That saying there's nothing wrong with it is a strong term. Should you be aware of things that you are doing?
Well,
However, we also live in 2021 where nothing that you do, whether it's on WhatsApp,
whatever.
whether it's on Signal, whether it's nothing is 100% private. It does not exist in
Yeah, and
2021.
you're not wrong. Okay. And I don't disagree with you. And the argument has been made to me like they already know everything about you. Yeah, I know, but why would I make it easy?
No,
Like
and I agree with that. I,
I'm the kind of guy, if the alphabet boys roll up and they're trying to sequester me, legitimate or not, I'm going to give them heck, man. I'm going to give them hell. I'm not going to let them, even if it's legitimate. Okay. I'm going down. So I'm just saying they could just be like, you didn't pay taxes. I'm like, I don't believe in them. It's stealing. Taxation is theft. Get out of my house.
and
I don't know you.
I am down with you from that standpoint, but we also
So
live in a one check terms and condition world, right? How many people, if I lined up 100 random people from
right.
whether it was Facebook or Signal, right, or anything else, and said out of that 100 people, hand on a Bible if you believe in that thing, how many
Yeah.
of people actually read the terms and conditions that they of the app that they
Zero.
selected? It would be zero. It would be 1%
Yeah.
of 1%. I am one of those crazy people. Okay?
Okay.
But it's still, my point is I am 1% of 1%. So in a world that we live in, that we gave up our personal data decades ago, this is not a new thing.
Yeah.
I think
About 15
something
years
like
ago.
this it's a blip. Like it's a
Yeah.
blip.
So I understand where you're coming from, and the average person, and when I say the average person, I think about my extended family. I have one cousin who's kind of on the same wavelength of like, hey, we need to use open source. We need to use. I even despise the fact that we use Zoom to make this podcast. I wanted to use Jitsi, which is the preferred alternative. It's open source and it's double end encrypted. But, I'm working with, like he said, a dinosaur who's like,
A
all of our
double
information's out
encrypted
there.
for a video that he's uploading to YouTube, folks. Did you hear
That's
what
the
he
only
just said?
reason.
Double encrypted for something
Yeah.
he's gonna put on the internet anyway.
It's encrypted on both ends. That's what I mean. So what I'm point that's the only reason why we're doing this on Zoom is because we're gonna put it on YouTube. So what difference does it make?
Right. Well, look, I think it's important. The part to get out of this story, I think, is to again bring it back to business and marketing and things that we talk about. Is it's important to pay attention to what companies that you are using, whether it's partnering with or in this case free services that you're using, to understand what they're doing with their data. That is really, you should know in 2021. If you don't, just spend a little bit of time learning about how they use your data. Two, that this also shows you how companies like this get away with it. Because as I said, I thought it was a very important distinction to say that they didn't lose business as of now because of this, because they knew that they wouldn't. Does it create a bigger market for companies like Signal and these other ones? Absolutely. I mean, Signal was downloaded the most it's ever been downloaded in a 24-hour period after the difference in terms and conditions. But that was still only 800,000 users, right? And that was their biggest day. So does it mean more business for them? Absolutely. But WhatsApp knew when it did it that it was 1% of 1%. That it's going to affect their business minimally in the long run. And what they get out of it from the Facebook aggregate side is tens of millions of dollars.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just postulating that the consumer of the future, not the boomers, not the, Gen Xers,
No, the
not
Gen
even the
Zs,
old.
the Gen Zs, not even millennials, the Gen Zs.
Yes, I think they're a more security focused and conscious consumer. They're going to be. I think so. I don't know.
Yeah,
But all of these
we'll
idiots are
see.
giving their stuff to the Chinese Communist Party via TikTok. So
Well, but that's what I mean. We'll see. I mean, you never know about generations until they get to the we're just now learning really what your generation, the millennials, really are what they're about, right? You have to become adults and start forming an identity to really learn what a generation is about. Gen Z behind y'all, and then what is it? The Alpha after that, I think, is the generation after that. We'll see. I don't know that they are, because like you just said, TikTok is the highest social media platform for Gen Z right now,
yeah.
and that is nothing but giving your data to China. You know what I mean? Because that's where that company comes from, and they are signing those terms and conditions all day long. Are they more aware of the environment? Yes. Are they more aware of their safety and security? I don't know about that one. I also think you can sell that generation on, they'll be really the first full generation that grew up in an environment where their data is being aggregated from zero, right? Their data is being aggregated from their parents buying their infant clothes and their, you know what I mean, what colleges their parents, you know what I mean, are fans of, and the NFLs they're fans of, and whatever. And how do you market to somebody that you have that much data on? I think it's going to change marketing for the future. I think niche marketing for you and that's how they're going to sell it to them. Oh, by the way, yes, we are impinging on your data, but you realize that I'm only going to show you what you want anyway.
And listen, that from that angle, I don't care about anyone having my data because I'm conscious of what I'm putting up on places. Where I'm more concerned, and I think that's where the concern arises, is when the government goes, hey, Facebook, we want to know what X and YZ group said about having a protest somewhere. Not talking about a specific event. I'm not talking about anyone who's wearing horns or sat in the seat of the house. I'm not talking about at all. Not being
Right, right, right,
commercial.
right, right. I got you. See, I held back. Danny. I held back.
But what's interesting is some of those people went to Telegram and also found out that Telegram is going to not they're not going to read their data. They're going to delete their groups though.
Right.
So I think open source, and here's my hope, is that open source, and as we have younger and younger people, where programming just becomes, hey, do you have a laptop? You have a tab? Like everyone has like it's going to become more and more ubiquitous. And as it becomes more and more ubiquitous, more and more people will have the competency to go, let me just pull up the source code on Zoom or source code on
Sure.
some open source thing and look at what they're tracking. And so I think this, and here's me being an optimist about the
Here's
future.
Danny going globalist. Go ahead.
I'm not, what are up yours? Um,
Because
I
that's
am
what you're talking
optimistic.
about. That's what open source means. But go ahead.
It's okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Talking to you about technology is like trying to explain to someone from 1900 how an iPhone can take a
Okay,
picture
I
and
was
send it to
putting
you.
a computer together that's half your height when you were still in diapers, brother. Okay,
Yeah,
so you go
I've
ahead.
put computer. Yes, okay, fine. 100 years ago, my brothers and I'm optimistic about the future of open source and its widespread
Hmm.
adoption because of things like this.
I agree. I
And
agree.
and as someone who is, like I've said before, an anarcho-capitalist, a voluntarist, or whatever, I'm a libertarian anarchist type of person. I do see a future where people go, my data is important enough that I'm not. Um, a government via a private company acting as a surrogate have my data
Yeah.
and data privacy. And so, anyways, to round this out, I think the future for open source is so bright, and I think that more and more consumers. If you're someone out there starting a business, I know someone who owns a lab franchise, a retail lab franchise, where you can go get Dos Equis testing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking to me about, because at some point in time, my doctor thought I had the Dos Equis. They were wrong. I didn't. Um, and I was uninterested in getting testing because I'm not participating in any sort of, the health department's going to give you a call and let you know whatever. I'm not participating. And this
Again,
was well after.
you and your brain, the way it works. Not that the
Yeah,
government is there to, hey, you is there for your protection, but
it's
they're
not
out
there
to
for my.
get you. No,
They are out to
folks,
get me.
Danny might as well be wearing a tinfoil hat, okay?
Right.
No,
Okay. Yep.
we're all here to help each other. That's what
Right.
we're about, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Right. And Jeffrey Epstein, totally not a conspiracy that turned out to be true at all, right? Anyways, the point is, he said, well, we fit into a set of guidelines where we don't have back reporting. I'm like, okay, so the way you pitch your service is we provide private Dos Equis testing. And he's like, it's legal because we fit into whatever, guideline.
Yeah.
And because people are paying, so there's free tests that whatever government or whomever is issuing or a company is issuing. So you can drive up to a Walgreens, what have you, and other testing sites. So we're private, and so if you pay for the test, we don't submit it anywhere. And he says it's legal. I was like, well, if somebody had told me that, I might have pursued testing. And I think that's interesting. And if you're a business owner, it
I find
is.
it interesting that you would allow anything to stand between you and healthier living or whatever. The fact that, look, I don't care. If I can get
Okay.
on the
Can I
list
tell you
for
why though?
a
Can I
Dos
tell you
Equis
something?
vaccine and
Yeah.
they want my blood culture snot
Uh-huh.
test, what my junk looks like, I don't
Uh-huh.
care. Put me on the list. All right, they already
Okay.
have all the information anyway. So the fact that you would let anything stop
Uh-huh.
you from doing what is best for you and your family,
So
insane to me.
in this particular scenario, all the doctor told me was if it comes back positive, there's nothing we can do. Just lock yourself in your room. I'm like, okay. There's no point. Just lock yourself in your apartment. I was like, all right, well, I can do that already. And it
He's
turned
doing
out,
that already, folks.
right.
But anyway, go ahead.
I'm saying that it turned out that my appendix had popped. And because I
Yeah.
couldn't get a physical exam anywhere,